everybody. Welcome back to another episode of God Built This podcast. I'm your host, Maxine, and we're on episode 61. I'm joined with my guest, my friend, Alletia.
Hey guys, how are y'all?
Back at it again. Listener favorites. And we're just going to go ahead and get into these topics. First and foremost, we know that Donald Trump is impeached. He is impeached. And this is a victory. This is a victory that we should sit in and rest in. But not just that. We should also take this moving forward for the 2020 election. And what I'm hearing more so in the conversations about this situation is that it's not a big deal. It's not that serious. The Senate is 97% Republican. And my question is, so?
Exactly.
So, like, we could still allow ourselves to be victorious and joyful that, okay, we're a step further. And as we were talking about in our pre-production, there is a process in order for him to be removed from office. And so why not allow us to go through this process instead of just like raining on our parade?
Yeah, like, oh, we're not going to get the outcome we want, then we shouldn't do it again. So then if y'all... That makes no sense in anything. Like, and especially it's really disconcerting because a lot of these people who are saying this consider themselves intelligent. So then just test your own logic against yourself. So you should have never applied to a job, especially as a black person. Everything you do is you are a higher percentage of not getting it for whatever reason. So should you not have went through the process? All these testimonies that you yourself have that you don't even have to share with nobody else about, if you hadn't just tried, you would have never got that thing that you ended up getting. Why? Because you went through the process. And so when we're talking about just the larger picture on just, I can't even really I will not act like it's not a big deal that people are trying to downplay the side that this man deserved no type of accountable action because it's not the type of accountable action that you feel is what victorious is. Like, yes, the ultimate goal is you need to remove him from office. Now, that doesn't remove the judges he's placed on the bench because judges have lifetime appointments. Like, there are a lot of things that you can't undo, and that's the whole fucking point, that he should have never been elected in the first place. Period. Because policy is the most dangerous thing. People are still feeling the effects of a crime bill that Joe Biden wrote with Bill Clinton, and that Bill Clinton passed. Policy affects generations, but you can't allow him to stay in that position, or at the very least you need to try to weaken it. Like, I don't understand this concept of like, oh well, it's not going to do things. It's not going to undo anything. Okay, yes, that's true. It's not going to undo anything, but you need to prevent it from further harm. It will, removing him or holding him accountable, it did a lot for people who were feeling the direct effect of him being a president. A lot of times people want to act like on one end they want to be hypocritical about how the presidential race and anything doesn't matter. People don't pay attention to it, but there are a lot of people paying attention to it. And a lot of it to them is a mental and emotional. That's why you go to your grandmother's house and you got Kennedy, Bill Clinton, and there is no rhyme or reason why black people should have an affinity for Bill Clinton with just the policy that he allowed to reign. Hold on. Hold on. I'm getting to a point. I'm saying this one point. For sure. If they understood the policy aspect of Bill Clinton, if it was just about policy and just about the law, they'd be calling him a racist all day. Not that he is or not, right? Because people like to push themselves away from like, well, that's just policy, not what my personal feelings are. Because the policy had destroyed social, I would call them social justice programs, but all the welfare programs, he gutted those programs. That's a historical fact. And who did that affect? And so if they knew this stuff, they would not have this affinity. But you can't go in your grandmother's house and say shit about Bill Clinton. You can't say that. Even if we ourselves, our generation, and how we feel towards Obama, and no, Obama was not perfect, right? People lend to their emotional attachment to these presidents. And it's not just a black people thing. White people have that about Kennedy and about all these other presidents. And so when you appeal to that side and that nature of them, even if you can attack him from that side, that is still a win, a victory. So no, he's not in handcuffs right now, but people are being his corruption is being exposed, and that changes the perception, right, and the adulation that people have towards him as a president, which is giving him leashes, giving him all the room in his leash to be as vile as he can be. And so if it's having people pull that leash back, that's a win. That's a victory.
Okay, so with Bill Clinton, a lot of people, the black community, they consider him as the first black president. And
he an honorary Sigma?
He's okay. I don't even know. Okay,
I think he's an honorary Sigma. I have to look that shit
That's
up.
blasphemy, and I'm not even gonna entertain that. But the thing is that ever since he stepped on Arsenio Hall's show and played that trumpet,
and that damn saxophone,
the saxophone, that's what it was. And when he cheated on his wife, they're like, "Oh, that's a black man." Like people look at him like, "Well, he's one of us. He's a human. He's real. He's connected." And I think, of course, had there been a Barack Obama before Bill Clinton, then there wouldn't be that much of an infatuation about Bill Clinton.
They wanted to see themselves.
But they wanted to see themselves so bad. Like, black people wanted to see themselves so badly in a president that Bill Clinton was the closest to it for some strange reason. Like, you have to cheat on your wife and make that,
he talked in a southern voice.
Talked in a southern voice. Have this very just charm about him that a lot of people felt comfortable. Oh, that's my president. Oh, that's my president. So despite his horrible policies, despite
and he had some of the worst. That's the thing about it. He had some of the worst policies that directly affected the crime bill, slashing welfare programs. If you don't want to talk about shit else, and I'm not even so. And it's so funny how black people automatically think should stop giving grace to anybody. Because we give so much grace because we're just so, and that's just in our natural epigenetic makeup. Because one, it's a survival instinct.
Yeah, it is.
And so it's hard for me to be like, oh, y'all stop giving grace. But to understand outside that grace, when people, we need to have this more inclination to be able to, when we have this opposing knowledge, when we experience that cognitive dissonance, to say, oh man, I really understand. I mean, it's just the same that with Kennedy, the people who are wealthy are attracted to the more aristocratic type presidents because they want to see somebody in him. Everything is identity politics. I understand that part, but you got to look at policy that these people are creating. That you ain't seen your Uncle Junebug them and your brother them, right? Who I'm talking about anybody who's not serving nonviolent crimes, right? Like selling weed or the drug war. Those were the reason why it's a 3-strike rule. That's from his presidency. And you ain't seen them niggas in 15 years because they're in an industrial complex that he okayed.
But you love Bill Clinton.
And the thing is, to this day.
Yeah.
To this day that you know it. You ain't got to go around loathing the man, but you need to treat it like you would treat anything else when you find the facts, especially something as harmful as a community structure. The way people can't even find suitable mates anymore. Like, let's talk about like the just population difference between black women and black men and being able to find someone suitable and how that has us in a frenzy. And you have this, like, that contributed to this whole black woman intention and then you have black men pushing back, saying it's not true. When it's like half you niggas are in prison and like that's supposed to be something we should just overlook and overcome. It's just like you niggas don't even want to hold a nigga that's accountable, even in spirit.
But we hold it, why we overlook it, because it's always been the status quo. Like, it's always been something like, well, if you just stem it back from slavery, we've always been disenfranchised. We've always been in prison. We've always had the odds against us. So it's like, oh, it's nothing new. So the crime
But we have more freedom now than we did before to, at the very least, be able to discourse about knowing the truth and being able to be, and not being openly like so flippant about it. It's one thing to be like, okay, you know what, that's just what it is. But then to turn your mouth around and have apathy towards it, that's a totally different thing. To like tell yourself a story and make it something so monumental that has broken communities to be so minuscule. That's the issue.
But think about it, like, there's a lot of families who, you know, God forbid, your brother, your father did something so heinous to a neighbor, a distant person, but you only know him as this, you know, this loving, this caring, that's my dad, that's my brother, what are you talking about? And so with Bill Clinton, even though we don't have that obviously personal connection with him, it feels that way, and we can't we can't even allow ourselves to consider and feel, oh wait, he did us wrong. Like, he set bills and policies in place so Black people could fail. People can't even feel that way. So instead of feeling it, I'm gonna just be apathetic. I'm just going to shut off my feelings and just remember Bill Clinton as the man who played the saxophone on Arsenio Hall, the man who, fucked up in his marriage, but he's trying to make it work, the man who seems like a really cool guy when you have a beer with him. Like, they don't want to consider, no, he did some fucked up things, just like your father or your brother may have done some fucked up things. People don't want to consider the reality, and they're just, okay, well, I'm just going to hold on to this fantasy that I've created of this person, even though the truth is right in our face.
And I think people don't understand that. See, and that's what this kicked me, because I remember having a conversation with my brother. I was like, you better not ever do, if you ever, like, raped or hit a woman, your ass, you can't, I'll snitch on you in a hot second. And I remember having a conversation with my mom, because for some reason we were talking about, I don't know if we were watching a movie, and she might have said a comment about how she would have never done that to her son, and she was like, she wouldn't send that nigga to jail. You harm someone, you gotta go to jail. You harm someone. Now, does that mean I'm gonna stop loving my brother? I'd be there to visit my brother all the fucking time. I'd make sure that he wasn't in dire straits. Like, even if I couldn't see, if he did something so heinous that I could not physically see him, I still would probably send money. There are levels to where you can still have a connection. No one's telling you to burn the shit down, but you cannot be so blind to the fact that, and to the lack of accountability to someone, because one, you're not just hurt. It's not just about you. I understand the instinctual and probably just natural human nature to not want to ostracize outside of a tribe, because no one wants to break up no one wants to break up a good time. But you got to move past that, because when you don't move past that, it's never just one thing. Yeah. It tumbles and it builds and that's why we have these these structures, right? These very unjust economical structures, racial structures that seem insurmountable, and people are like, well, damn, how can we undo the damage? Well, let's start by how the damage got caused in the first place, because there was all these little moments where people didn't want to hold people fucking accountable for things. And when we're talking about a job, right, that's a familial honor and respect versus someone who, you can want to like this person because of an entertainment factor, but at the end of the day, you got to consider a job. He had a job to do and he did not do it, or he actually placed you in harm. And so you need to take that stance on it, and you need to be able to separate yourself. And then you need to ask yourself why you can't separate yourself, because it's a red flag. It feels like a hug that holds a dagger.
But when we think about the actual first Black president, Barack Obama, and when we consider his time in the presidency, we see that he didn't really do too much for the Black community. But then there's the argument of, well, he had to play the politics, he couldn't really do it. So the question is, who will, who would really stand for that? Because the fantasized first Black president, Bill Clinton, obviously failed us. Now, the actual Black president, Barack Obama, who we thought, okay, here we go. He's the one who's going to just have reparations. But reparations wasn't even a conversation in 08.
It wasn't. And I honestly think people are missing out the other party in that. And we're talking strictly Black community in itself. How are we, right? Everybody has a lobbyist. And what power are we yielding? Because we have a lot of power. We just are very ignorant on how to use it, because our generations, and you can count our mothers, came into this power, and there was a lot of unstructure on how to use it. Because we're so survival based. And so to move from survival to, I don't want to say a lack of strategy, because we couldn't have gotten this far without strategy, but it's strategy in a different perspective. And so now we're trying to thrive on playing certain rules that one never accounted for us and never will. And so we tried to play that game on, like, let's just be like everybody else, and we were never going to be accepted. So then how do we kind of craft this space for ourselves? And they had different things to be accountable for. Bill Clinton wrote specific laws that we know literally caused detrimental harm. Barack Obama just didn't do enough, and those things are still bad in their own slights, right?
But there's a difference.
And there is a difference. And so there's a difference in the strategy, and I don't think that it is never gonna be that person, especially from enslaved people who got their freedom. There is gonna be no person that has to represent for all, that's going to free us. They didn't free us in the first place. When the president that did free us, because Benjamin Franklin emancipated slaves too before Lincoln did. Even when that president freed us, who does it come back to though? Right? It always falls on those individuals, that individual direct power. So we're going from a macro level where you have a president say something, and yeah, he put that policy in effect, but then how long did it really take for slaves to get emancipated? So, and how did it really come to pass? The communities themselves realized, like, you're not playing in this game where it's just we need this person. Yeah, we need them as an ally, but there's a lot of structural and political and lobbyist things that you have to do and strategic things that you have to do as individuals in your tight-knit communities to grant your own freedom. The policy in itself is just to show, right? A part of it. It gives the layout, but you had a president do that. If anybody, let's just say Lincoln was the first black president. Hell, if we're really talking about somebody who just was like, okay, shit's real fucked up, let's just make some change. He was the one was it.
Yeah, he should be the one considered the first.
But then, but did it happen the way that we think, looking and idealizing our president should? And I don't think we ever should have had that. We ever should have been focusing our attention to the president at all. It needs to be closer to ground. We needed to be more focused on court systems. What are the direct, like, judges and school boards, like those issues that we're still fighting to get spaces in that make the most on people really not only being able to learn about themselves and self-actualize, to be able to become people that can grow in their own power and then know how to wield it.
Speaking of black men, Russell Simmons is just one of the men who has been called out for his sexual misconduct, his allegations of rape, and just harassment, not just, of course, but sexual harassment towards women. And he just kind of fell off the face of the earth. Like, he moved to Bali, I think
it was after his first accusation too, after Weinstein.
Now that's questionable already. He recently made a post towards Oprah Winfrey, and it's a whole long paragraph. I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but he's just pretty much calling out Oprah, asking, well, first starting off with, you are such a shining light to my family, to the community, and I have admired you for so long, but I'm just not understanding why you're pretty much singling me out, and it feels like a single out. And he used those words, you're singling me out for this recent documentary, and he's finding it troubling, quote, that you choose me to single out in your recent documentary. He admits that he has been a playboy in the past, and that he's done maybe, some minor sexual misconduct acts. But it was never specific, and maybe he doesn't feel the need to go into the specificity of it. But there's one recent woman who came out and said he raped her. Mm-hmm. Like, he took advantage of her. She was his intern, and she was able to climb the charts in the industry, but he took advantage of her. And so my question is, with Oprah, I've been looking at her sideways.
I've always looked at her. I'm trying to remember something I learned. It's like I learned something about her, and I don't know if it had to do with her schools in Africa. Oh. It was something about some misappropriation somewhere. Or no. I think it was the conversations about the N-word. You remember there was like a whole thing.
Jay-Z was on her show. I remember that, yeah.
I think it was that. That's the first time I looked at Oprah like...
Really? It was that one?
Man, what? You played in fucking Color Purple.
Oh, okay.
Because it was so... That conversation in itself is ridiculous about the whole black people shouldn't say the N-word. Get the fuck out of here. Everybody knows being able to reclaim language for different use is probably one of the most powerful things black people have done for their survival. Being able to reclaim the N-word mentally, psychically, has probably been one of the most powerful things to their survival. And so I don't even understand why it's a conversation of you sitting here because you can't. I didn't understand what's the word I'm looking for? The reluctancy to just outright say anyone who is not black can't say it without having to fold in. And I understand who Oprah is and who her audience that made her famous. Yeah, all the black people too, but black people aren't the only ones in the world. We're a very small percentage of,
right.
So I understand. But when you have we have conversations that are really just that are very specific to your intra-community, then you can be specific and be able to just say outright, hey, no, black people can say it. I might not say it, but I understand why we say it and how we reclaimed it for ourselves in a way that they want to say it and then be so charging about, I'm saying it just like you're saying it, but you can't. And so the fact that her and fucking Jay-Z out anyway, but the fact that but I think he was on the side like, well, you tripping, like,
yeah, his argument was more so what you were saying, how we took a word that was nasty and claimed it to our own.
We put power in. We switched the charging of the power because literally the word N-word could bring someone to their knees.
Yeah.
So the fact that we charging that power, and it's not specific to black people. Every community there's a bigot, a spigot. I heard there's a new word, like if you call a Mexican a beaner, that's a
slur.
A slur. I learned it today. I was like, who the fuck would call someone a beaner? And so we had this Asian woman, and she acting like she doesn't know slurs. And hell, I never heard it. She was like, so what am I gonna say, beaner? And I was like, bitch, you can't do that. Like, don't like act as a joke. They just told you it was a slur. All type of like jokes should have just been had by your soul. Yikes. Like, but I didn't even know something like that. So everybody has words like the word faggot and how gays themselves call themselves faggots. And in that community, to my understanding, when they say it to each other, does not mean the same thing. How women call each other bitch now.
Yeah.
As a term of empowerment, it is not mind-blowingly complicated because it is something that is a natural evolution of language for the oppressed to take to. That is literally part of their revolution of oppressed people. They start with the language because it's easily accessible.
My thing with Oprah is she did a documentary on Michael Jackson. And now with that documentary, we're looking at the two white men who were alleging that Michael did something to them and just abused them sexually. It turned out that their statements were invalid. There were a lot of holes in what they were saying. Mm-hmm. And it just seemed like it just wasn't a good source. Like they weren't good witnesses. They weren't good people to kind of pin against Michael Jackson. And my thing with Oprah Winfrey is that why hasn't she made a statement after that? She should have maybe, put herself down and been like, you know what? I jumped the ship on this. I didn't realize these two men weren't really valid and I apologize. But I haven't heard a single word from her about this situation. I think it's just so horrible when people go on this high horse. I know it started with R. Kelly, and yes, it's valid with him for sure. But when you go down the spiral of, well, it started with Michael Jackson for sure, but like recently, when you go down the spiral of, okay, let's see who else got these allegations, and let's see how many documentaries I can make about them, how many shows I can make about them, how much cash I could receive from this for raising awareness.
It moves from justice to just exploitation on the back, especially people who can't defend themselves. So that's when I looked at Oprah like, well, what are you really trying to do? And I was looking at some but older clips of her show, and I used to love the Oprah Winfrey show. Like, love it. And there was a moment when she had a couple of basketball players on her show. It was Michael Jordan, some other dudes, but Michael Jordan was on it. And they were talking about, like, pretty much poor people choose to be poor. Like, there's no... Oh, yeah, wasn't it Michael Jordan? Yeah, I stopped.
Yeah, he said a comment, and he's like, yeah, like, what do you... Like, if I see a homeless person on the street, I'll just laugh. Or, like, get a job. Yeah, that's what he said. Like, get a job. Like, it's that easy. And that just really struck me the wrong way. Like, for you to be where you are, as successful as you are, and as successful as Oprah is, there is clearly a disconnect between you now and the average Joe Schmo, the average black person in America. And it's not as easy to just say, oh, just go ahead and get a job. Let me just go ahead and get a 6-figure job and be just as successful as you. It's not... obviously it's not that easy. Like, no one chooses to be impoverished. No one chooses to figure out, how can I stretch this $100 this week until my next check, or how can, like, no one chooses that lifestyle. And when she just kind of flippantly laughed in that moment, or nodded her head, I'm looking at her like, oh. And obviously the me back then when I was watching that, I was just like watching it. But when you see it now as a young adult, it's like, wait, what is she?
Well, because it goes back to this. It was like, too much is given, much is expected. When you put yourself as in a light and in a perspective, you try to wrap this perspective around yourself where you are so smart, you're so awakened and enlightened, and you have access to knowledge that other people don't have, and so you feel it's your responsibility to give that. You also have a responsibility to be that voice, to push back against those ideas. And so people say, oh, okay, well, once they, class and racial oppression go hand in hand. And so then Oprah themselves, their whole moniker is built off of, I knew what it was like to struggle. So it's not like as if they never experienced it. And so it's different from saying to maybe a person who's always lived in wealth, and they just truly can't even understand, because there is a certain perspective, right? Depending on how you grew up and how you live, how you see the world, right? But these people, especially Michael Jordan, have been through oppression. In themselves, and even like say in the case of Michael Jordan, where maybe it wouldn't have been that long because he's always been an athlete. But Oprah was certainly longer. You went through major oppression. But then even Michael Jordan, your direct family. And so that's when it becomes this concern, because it's not even that shit you can't even understand. It doesn't matter how rich you come. When you come from poverty, that mindset is hard to shift back. You make it purposeful to try to think like someone else. And no one's telling you to stay in a bubble, but then to be dismissive about the plight and how robust and challenging it is to just be a regular person, and what it means to have money, like what the difference is your livelihood makes. And then to do it in such an entertainment, as if your success and the fact that you're rich aren't because of the people who are poor, the ones watching TV, people who were rich were not watching your shows. It was the people who were unemployed who were watching these shows, right? Like, you got your money off of people who were in these dire straits, and then for you to go, and you can't do with everything, but that was a case where you could have, at the very least, could have been like, well, why are you laughing? Like, challenge him, because are you really that afraid that Michael Jordan's not going to be your friend anymore? Versus you're supposed to be a champion and a voice for women and a voice for children and a voice for all these things. And I didn't say you were a voice for those. You said you were a voice for those things. And so, I mean, just with the lack of your question about her not saying anything, the thing about it is what people will always tell you, don't admit fault. If you don't admit fault, you could be wrong to the doorknob. But if you don't admit it, people are going to always be hesitant to call you on it or to do anything about that. But when you admit fault, it kind of opens the door. And so I just know from just like a corporate view, people are always just like, don't say sorry, don't admit fault. Always pitching it and being like, thank you for bringing that up. But you never actually say the words, I'm sorry, I messed up. And so it's a power play.
But what about humility?
No, you need those things. It's not the right thing to do. And especially when anything is touching on, I feel like it's about strategy. There are different ways you got to play depending on the topic that you're talking about. And so when we're talking about something like Michael Jackson and child abuse, you leave those things at the door because you're affecting someone's life. And maybe not Michael Jackson's anymore, but he had children, he has family. Right. Or if there was, vice versa. The thing about Michael Jackson is always so hazy with those things, because I don't know what the fuck Michael did, but I don't think he did nothing. And so, but it's very hazy when people live so differently from you to where is the line between a crime and a difference in lifestyle? And like what was the behind the scenes? Like R. Kelly needed to been in jail. But you can't discount the fact and the evidence that shows how their families and even the girls themselves were willing to be consensual in the shit that he was doing. Some of those girls and their families, right? It was not just this one predator who went out and chained. And that's why I think when you watch his thing and I was looking back at that because I'm all team lock the nigga up. I don't give a fuck if you because I'm always, you need to be the one that says no. You know it's wrong. It doesn't matter if them families offered them girls up on a fucking silver platter. People have those urges, those they're actually diagnosable if they, like pedophilia or whatever you want to call it. But it is not new for men to see teenage girls as women. That's not even our history as human beings. Teenage women were wives. It's very recent in modern times that women are not were not being taken in that way. So honestly, R. Kelly was doing, in the way that he was behaving, fits into a lot of the ways that our families, like your grandparents, your grandparents, met at 12 and met at 13, these older ass men. So it wasn't that difference. But I was just like, it needs to be a simultaneous conviction on all of them, because you have to take in part why he felt so comfortable, why he feels like he didn't do anything wrong, because these parents were literally, and even the girls, even though the children themselves might not fully understood once they got there, but just like the overall, like when you hear this testimony, you're like, I'm sorry, what? So your parents were involved?
Yeah.
And because you want to believe it's just this one. Everybody has that face of a monster, and you have to hold them accountable to that. So
I don't know. It's hard because when I bring it back to Oprah, I just see it as she isn't calling out Harvey Weinstein. She isn't calling out, who else? There was a couple of white men.
But how many people have called out Harvey Weinstein versus how many people have called Russell Simmons? I look at it as a strategy, right? First of all, Oprah is black. I would expect her to look at black people first.
But then it could hurt her, though, image-wise, because you're tearing down
You can't tear down something that's wrong.
But my point is, if you're only focused on the black men who may be well within their right to be torn down, why not also shed light on the Oprah level of the Harvey Weinsteins out there?
I looked at it more as, I have seen so many publications about Harvey Weinstein. I forgot about Russell. I'm not even gonna lie. I heard about Russell when Harvey Weinstein first popped out. I forgot that nigga moved. I haven't heard shit about Russell Simmons anymore. And in this documentary, Oprah might not just be talking about Russell, but he might be spotlighted. I took it as, you know what? I've heard a lot about Harvey Weinstein. I need somebody to focus on Russell Wilson. Is that his name?
Russell Simmons.
I need somebody to focus on Russell Simmons. Because Harvey, even if Oprah doesn't say it, Oprah doesn't have to say everybody. Just like, why didn't those people focus on Russell Simmons when they were focused on Harvey Weinstein? That's all they focused on. It was Harvey Weinstein. I looked at it as, it's now time to focus on these other people. The people said the same thing about R. Kelly. Why just focus on R. Kelly? Because there are a lot of men that probably have these situations that they just ducked off. And R. Kelly was sitting there like, are y'all for real just targeting me and I'm surprised ain't no other names come up, right? You could say it's kind of the same thing about Diddy. Misa, his baby mama of Justin, the first kid, was young. Was still, right. I think she was 17 or something like that. Like,
is she never said he did anything
like
inappropriate,
right? So, but even still, like Russell, like, so if we're just looking at the chargings of rape, right? I looked at it as, I've already heard about Harvey Weinstein. I didn't see it as, oh, well, she just focused on black men, so we'll tear it down. I'm looking at, who is she focused on black men? Did these black men, do they have these allegations against them? Are we talking about those allegations? No. In a big conversation, we're not. We're not talking about them. So she's bringing them up. So people are mad that she's bringing them up. So if she had added a little Harvey Weinstein in there, would it still be okay? Or the fact that she mentioned them at all? And I honestly quite think it's the fact that she mentioned them at all, and the fact that she's Oprah and people are going to listen to her when they bring it up. Because Russell was brung up when Harvey Weinstein first got brought up. I ain't heard about Russell since. Ain't nobody wrote shit really about him. They focused on Harvey because he was the bigger fish in the power play. But Russell ass has been in that same circle for decades with Harvey, probably not in the same room. They have similar power structures. He probably not as rich or whatever, because Harvey was focused on actresses, but Russell did too. So I was just like, if these men did the thing that they said they did in these allegations, who the fuck cares brings them up? I don't understand the bringing down of the community part. This is why, and this is in every community, it's not the black community. There are tons of intro family abuse from Indian families,
yeah.
African families, but and all of us, we have in common with everything needs to stay in house, and that's why this type of harm is perpetuated. And so I can understand why they were probably shocked, because is this what I'm shocked that Oprah would make a documentary about it, to be honest.
I just want Oprah to also talk about Harvey, and maybe she doesn't have to do it right now, but she also needs to, like, I wish she would have done it when it was so hyped up a few years ago or a year or two ago. Like, I just want that same fairness, because it does look awfully strange when it's another black man and another black man, and maybe Michael Jackson did something strange. Maybe Russell Simmons is guilty for his allegations, but there's pictures of her just galvanating in Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, how do you feel about this friend, or what it looks like a friend of yours, who's been accused of this? So why not? I should hear from you. I think
it's been too
just on a friend level.
I think,
you know?
I think, and I can understand that point of it. And I was looking at it more as, she saw it as, all these white publications are talking about these white men. Probably from the fear, because if any white publication talk about a black man, they getting that shit shot the fuck down. And she took it upon herself to say, okay, well, I have the type of platform. Let me focus on the black man aspect, because she thought people were going to give her more leeway to be able to have those conversations because she's a black woman. That's how I saw it. Not that her absence of Harvey means that she's focused more on them other than Harvey. I don't expect one publication to name them all. I think they're going to focus on whoever their readership or whoever. And it's funny to me because even as much as black people still love Oprah, white women are her demographic.
Yeah.
Right? And most of these women that have come out, at least, have been white. So that's the way I saw it. But there is a place to mention them all. I wouldn't be mad. Like, yes, I wouldn't want her, if she had a documentary, I would not have wanted her, me personally. She could have mentioned, like, you have to start with the special, like, this is when it really became big, Harvey Weinstein, and to have it there that she's not totally dismissive of it. But I would want her to focus on every single black man that has these fucking abuses, just for the simple fact that no other publication is gonna to say anything. And so they're just out here abusing folks for the sake of, well, if someone calls them out, it's targeting. You need to be targeted at this point. Someone needs to expose, like, we're talking about rape, right? We're talking about actual abuse. Yeah. They're being out here, Harvey Weinstein locked up, and y'all wonder who's still out here raping these folks. It's because nobody says anything. So I'm at the part where when we're talking about abuse, we're talking about severe harm. Get these niggas up out of here. Turn the lights on, let the roaches scatter, and we can be mad at Oprah later, because at the end of what are we getting from? We're getting knowledge and exposure of people and their crimes. And on the flip side, if they didn't do it, now, yes, that is
then that's
the
what
catch 22, right? But then that's not less to do about Oprah and how we deal with allegations of abuse and but it's very hard then you got to go back to the subject matter in the realm of the game and rules we're playing with. Abuse in itself is so hard, because people who abuse are less likely to report it. They've been abused for years, less likely to report it. When they report it, nobody believes them. And so we have conducted this system of, okay, when someone has reported abuse, that means they have gone to the point where there's more, it's statistically more likely they did it than they did it.
And also is that there needs to be more awareness of what actually is abuse and what does it look like, because a lot of times we accept, and we as women sometimes, maybe in the workplace, maybe amongst our friends, maybe amongst some family members, we accept certain behavior and we just see it as, oh, that's just how Uncle Tom is, that's just how my boss is, he's a little touchy. And it's like, well, if that made you uncomfortable and you didn't give him consent, and if he's doing it frequently and he's making you feel like a sexual object, I'm not saying go ahead and say rape. No, that's a huge other word. But there is a cause for, like, there's
just harassment,
sexual harassment. Like, we need to have this awareness talk about it, because people don't have the vocabulary on what to call things. That's a big part of it. People don't have a vocabulary. And I remember when I was a fellow, which is like a teacher's assistant, a couple of years ago, when I was starting off my teaching career, and my peer, he's a colleague of mine, he was just super touchy-feely, and he would like look me up and down, and he's like a bigger man, and so he'll walk in my boundary. Like, you have your personal space. He'll invade my personal space. He'll look me up and down. Maxine, looking kind of good today, and lick his lips. And I remember one time I was sitting at my desk, and he came up behind me and put his hand on my shoulder and like attempted to give me a massage. And I'm like, is this 1955? It really felt like a whole like case from a TV show from back in the day. And I turned around like, and I'm trying to play it off like, let me not make a big deal. I'm sure he doesn't mean any harm. And that's the things that some women, we say to ourselves and try to kind of dumb it down when no, I really felt uncomfortable. And so in that moment, I'm like trying to talk myself up to calling him out on it. Like, we shouldn't have to talk ourselves up to do that. So I ended up just texting him because it was like later on that day, I'm like, I can't wait. I got to just do it right now or I won't do it. I got to just do it. So I texted him. I'm like, hey, I'm sure you don't mean no harm. And there goes me again there goes just a woman who is trying to kind of make you feel good, right? Instead of speaking up for myself. So I'm just like, hey, I know you don't mean no harm, but I just didn't really like it when you did that. It just made me uncomfortable. So, it'll be great if you never do that again. And he was like, okay, I got it. I didn't mean any harm. And it just felt like he was so kind of not understanding, like, well, what are you talking about? Like, trying to dumb it down or gaslight me. And it's like, no, you put your both hands on my neck. Yeah. And you are filling me up. Yeah. And we're at work. And I think that's oftentimes the case when you're in an environment where it's a lot of young people. I was 22, 21, 23, around that age. And so it probably wasn't a big deal. Like, oh, we're just hanging out. We're cool. We're friends, right? Like, no, we're coworkers. And that's the blurry line that is often had when you're at a workplace and you're younger. Or you may be a friendly, naturally outgoing, charismatic person, and the other person may see it as, oh, this is my green light. Yeah. I'm going to see how far I could go, when no, this is inappropriate. So I do appreciate the talk that's being had about sexual abuse, about sexual harassment, all of that, because we don't sometimes see it. We don't see it when it's right in front of us. And it's not to like make every man feel uncomfortable. I'm not trying to attack men, but it's also just being mindful of how are you making the woman feel, especially when she may be alone in your presence and you may be a superior position, or even if you're not, whether we're peers or you're at a superior position, just be mindful of the words that you say. Like, just don't comment on my body. I think,
and too, like, when men feel attacked in the movements, is because, like, it's natural, and it's like you say, it's the status quo for women to be subjugated, and that you have no control of your body, you are property. And so just in this kind of revolution, right? I wish I knew another word, because I'm not. It is in the steps of the revolutions, right? The processes of revolutioning and demanding equal pay and really moving from the aspect of like not property, human being, and I own myself and I have all these rights, right? Everything was a shock when women worked in the home and getting more paychecks, and when women are saying like, no, I don't want to have children, and women being able to, even with 30 cents on a dollar or 60 cents on the dollar, be able to like, if I don't want to have a man in my life, I don't need you and I can still survive, when that's unheard of, right? Like, their livelihood depended on marrying because men held that type of power. Anything that feels like it's a gas to that feels like a shock, because in order to be able to really build a system and be able to understand, it's like a study. You need a certain amount of occurrences to be able to really be exposed to the spectrum of everything, the extreme ends and the nuances, because that's harassment is a lot of nuance, because it's always going to be drawn back to the individual context and individual. It's not like you can only have so many generalized blanket kind of rules and mechanisms of like, okay, when this happens, do this, pull this lever. Like, you always have to drill down. But until we can really get to the point where they're talking about it as if it's like breathing, that's when you can really you're going to be exposed to all these, and talking about men, to where it won't feel such like as in a direct attack, because it's a direct attack on everything that they grew up looking and seeing and understanding about themselves.
Right.
When they don't understand, it's a direct attack for those women too, because it's a revolutionary act in itself to even say anything, because they grew up with those same mamas who didn't say anything,
right.
those same grandmothers those same aunts didn't say anything. And so even if men on one end, right, it's like, I would never do that, because you haven't been put in a situation where you need to exert that power yet, but you're pushing back on the idea that one day you could have, and now you won't have that chance. A lot of times I feel like it's like a missed opportunity. They feel like they're gonna be missing out opportunity. Like, well, I would never abuse somebody. Okay, well then why are you so worried about people putting things in place to hold people who abuse accountable?
Right.
Because and subconsciously you understood that you had an advantage.
But it's like, if it doesn't apply, if you would never...
But it was like a future thing. Like, they don't want to admit that there could have been a situation that if they needed to, they could have done something bad and not gotten in trouble for it. And now that's going to be taken away. I really want them to come out and say it, because there's no other reason in my mind where you can be sitting up here being mad about, like, that's some, like, and I'm going to use a very silly comparison, right? Like, if black women, because let's take a general, if black women, they were told they couldn't wear booty shorts to school no more, or like bonnets, bonnets.
Oh, that case.
Let's use that. And people put up rules and say, bro, we finding niggas because you're, like, say if it was like a harmful bitch, I don't ever wear a bonnet.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna sit up here and sit up here and cry and talk about how I feel targeted about this bonnet. I can understand that there's probably this hoe is probably like profiling and racist, but then that's why it's a silly comparison, because we're talking about, abuse and harm versus like a policing of like what you wear that really doesn't harm anybody. But it's just the fact that if it's like a hit dog will holler, I don't understand why you should be ecstatic about those people not getting abused. It shouldn't even about what if. These rules are for those who have been abusing, who are abusing right now.
But the scary thing about that is those same men who be like, what do you mean? I wasn't going to do that. Or why are we all forcing it? They have to call out their peers. They have to call
and black
out
men have so many
them. And they have a lot of
and abusers and deadbeat daddies, because I ain't never seen a woman who won't call a deadbeat mother out on her shit, who won't call a designer wearing with your baby crust on their face out on their shit. They'll call you right in your face, and they will never take that woman seriously. Now, that ain't all women, because it's trifling ass women, but I'm just saying, because we have less leeway with that. And it's just sort of like that class thing again. Like, men are in their own class. You want to be friends with somebody like that so bad because you don't have to deal with the deadbeat part of their personality, but they're a deadbeat. I don't understand. What could you possibly be getting that's worth you not standing up for what's right? And I'm not even trying to be like preachy about it. Like, everybody falls short, and there's levels to things that people, but we're talking about like extremes, right? Like, I'm literally talking about the people who cry against like extremes, like abuse and just people who are not in their homes taking care of their children. Like, there ain't no excuse that you can come up to where you can be like cool with that.
Well, it goes back to the whole Bill Clinton thing. People don't want to see what's right in front of them of just the awful actions people take, and they just want to fantasize over what they thought this person was, or what they showed, or what that person showed themselves as. So no matter how abusive homeboy was, oh, well, he was my homeboy. How was he abusive? What do you mean?
That's crazy to me.
He was always genuine and kind, and it's pretty disgusting. Okay, so let's talk about this Carol Sanchez situation. I do have to admit, I have to retract my words. So on my Instagram, I was kind of going in on her. I mean, I did 2 posts. I didn't go in, but I called her trash. I did, and I'm gonna just say that and call it out. But I'm gonna retract that. I did call her trash. I called her. Oh,
I called her trash.
Right, and I said she needs to go just straight under the prison. And what she
y'all
did
see how quick y'all jumped to severe punishment.
I admit I did that because I was just so angry, because how can you lie about something so dangerous, something so prevalent to what's going on here in society? We've been hearing a lot of cases about human trafficking, sex trafficking, especially I've heard some in the Houston area, some back home in Boston. So to hear that a young woman has decided to lie about this and put her mom in despair, her family in despair, I was just angry initially. And I feel like that's right. Like I'm gonna stand in that anger, but what I do want to retract is calling her trash and making her feel like she's all the way in the wrong. She shouldn't have done that. But then I question about what is going on at home for you to want to come up with that elaborate plan. Like there is something so traumatic happening for you to want to stage your own kidnapping. Mm-hmm. You know, so that's why I'm just like, well, you know, this is not a rebel without a cause. This has to be a cry for help. This has to be a young woman who, I don't know what's going on at home, but it has to be something so burdening for her to find this way as an escape.
As soon as I heard it, and then I heard that it was like, yeah, it was surprising. Like, damn, she kidnapped her own mistake. But I never thought she should be punished for it. One, because one person who staged it does not in any way distract or retract any type of like meaningful realization and awareness about what's happening with Black women in sex trafficking. Her staging that did not, in my mind, be like, damn it. And I understand the propensity of it because we do that with a lot of shit, right? Like, you do one thing. The Black community just, everything has to be perfect. Our plight for everything has to be, there can be no people who can be outside of the line of everybody, but everybody's not a true victim in the extreme. People might be victims on a spectrum, and so they're going to have different, and you should allow for that. I didn't think that she, other than a reprimanding, and if you want to say she wasted police resources, a fine. Yeah. Okay? Because what? And what does that say about you that y'all think the police are going to now not take anything else seriously because she staged that? The police's job is to take every case as it is. They are not supposed to, it doesn't matter if it was 20 times that shit didn't happen. This is not a cry wolf situation. There is no police policy that says, well, if this shit happened 12 times it didn't happen, you don't answer the fucking call. You treat it as if it never happened before, and you treat that crime as if it all happens. And if they don't, that says more about the police and our structuring than it says about anything else. Because that's a hypothetical. This does not happen all the time where someone's crying wolf. 9 times out of 10, they are getting, 10 times out of 10, they are being sex trafficked. When someone posts a missing thing, it is a sex trafficking or someone's literally legitimately being killed, especially in recent times. So I automatically thought, though, because one, she's a kid. And in the age of YouTube and Vine and all these other things where they literally have YouTube dedicated to pranks, how is this any different from those things? Like, if it's just to look at it in the perspective of, okay, now we know that, say there's nothing traumatic happening. Say it was a prank. Okay, well, people do they go to jail? And because the people who are being taped don't know they're being pranked. And so people have these whole channels where they're throwing shit on people, like causing actual harm to other people, putting their body fluids on people, all types of shit. Are those people going to jail? No. Like, I think people focus a direct outrage on her. That was a projection of outrage, one, of helplessness because they couldn't help the other girls who are legitimately missing. And then also from a place of Black people always have to be the perfect victim, or they're not a victim at all. And I don't subscribe to that. And then lastly, it was literally like, okay, y'all, for real, y'all really think that there's nothing going on where this girl, not only, she could have had herself kidnapped anywhere. She had to do it in front of her mother. She needed to make her parents believe she was gone. Why? Like, there's something to that.
There's something to that, and it says a lot about parenting. You know,
like, she might have been getting super abused at fucking home, where she needed them to believe that she was gone, and that was it.
Oftentimes at home, parents don't look at children as human beings. They see them as like my property. You are an extension of me. You're going to think the way I think. You're going to follow these set dreams that I have for you, and so I don't consider you. I don't consider your own personal life. So, and your own personal opinion. So and it may be to that extreme of abuse, but it's also abusive when you don't consider a child has their own individual self. When you're trying to perpetuate their own thinking and you're not allowing them to just be. And so that's just, I think a lot of times with Black parents, and I don't know about other parents, I'm sure it's other with white parents, Indian, whomever, I'm sure. But I could speak from just being a Black woman, being a Haitian woman, and knowing that when you speak up for yourself to your parents in a respectful manner, when you're just sharing your ideas or thoughts, when it's contrary to how they perceive you to be, then it's an issue. It's like, wait, excuse me, you're not supposed to have these Republican thoughts. You were brought up in a Democratic household. You're not supposed to have these progressive mindset. You're not supposed to do this and do that. You're supposed to just be who I've created you to be instead of me allowing you to just be. And that's the problem when parents don't consider their children as human beings, independent human beings, and they try to just mold them to who they think they should be.
I think the news statement came out and said, she said because she was stern, and people were like, and that goes to it. We don't know. And here's the one thing. People came at her as if she intentionally duped them. Like she expected this to go viral. At the very least, she was just trying to dupe her parents. She did not ask to go viral. She didn't ask. She wasn't trying to dupe the national public. She wasn't trying to okey doke y'all. At the very least, in parents, and at the very least, if anyone's gonna be super upset with her, it's them, right? But that was her circumference of harm, which I think is part of why she gave herself up so quickly. And why they got the truth out so quickly. Because she realized how the scale. She didn't mean for it to be all those things. So you have to understand like the intent of it as well. She didn't ask for y'all to make her viral and to make this a national outcry. At the very least, this is to her parents. And she might have been trying to prove her parents a lesson, which she is not the first person. Yes, she staged a kidnapping, but other people have done it by simply running away. Which why it's a thing for people. That's why it's a 24-hour wait, because they want to see if they went over their friend's house or their boyfriend's house, or they just don't want to be by your nagging parental ass now. So that could have been just her way of doing that same thing. Which is then when you frame it in that conversation though, then it becomes more normalized, because that is something. By research and by people's personal experiences, this is something a teenager would do who's experiencing certain issues. If they're feeling like they're in a stifling household, they'll run away, or they'll because she did it in a different way that looks like something else, but she didn't mean for it to look like that. Or she might have not have meant it to mean. She probably had every intention, maybe turning herself into her parents 24 hours later. We don't know that story, but I doubt she did it.
It speaks to her childish
right, but that's why.
She really is a child, but it's one thing to run away from home, maybe spend the night a little longer at your friend's house and don't tell your parents, whatever. But I'm gonna have these 4 men jump out the car, snatch me up when I'm walking with my mom at 7:16 p.m. Like all of that's just so elaborate to me. So you should be smarter than that. Like if you're going to run away from home, be away from your family, don't do that.
But she might have wanted to punish her. That's what I'm saying. She might have wanted to punish her family.
Wait, my point is, that is still so extreme that you should know, maybe this isn't a good idea to stage my kidnapping. Maybe I should just go ahead and just run away. Because that's why I said she may not be, obviously she's not asking for people to, focus on her and to be this popular viral video, but she should know better. Like,
but again, when you step back and something teenagers, it's like something you should have known better. It's like, damn, all I needed to take was 2 more steps and I could have seen the bigger picture. Teenagers, they literally could be 2 steps outside of seeing common sense, and they won't take those 2 steps. And that's why I wasn't surprised. I think I just wasn't surprised by the creativity of it, because I've seen prank videos, and to me I'm not saying it was a prank, but I'm saying, like, let's say if it was, I've seen prank videos do worse. And people when they find out it was a prank, they'll be all like, but at the time they didn't know it was a prank. So I was thinking of, like, for a millennial, for someone who's a child growing up to be that creative about it, I'm looking at these prank videos. These kids are doing shit all the time, doing the dumbest shit. The dumbest shit that you would be like, are you fucking serious shit? And to me, I was just like, of course she would do some dumb shit like that. Again, the kidnapping was the trigger because it is actually a huge epidemic that's going on right now. So it's like, you wish you would have made another stupid ass choice, but that's just the stupid choice she made.
Stupid, like foolish, like.
But it was still for.
If anything, I do hope that they seek therapy as a family, as a
probably not. I hope that she won't be even more abused.
That's what I'm hoping.
If that's what happening,
but I hope there's maybe
people are talking about they gonna send her to a psych ward to get on medication. It's like, what if she's not fucking insane?
Maybe like she could be not charged, but like kind of mandated to seek counseling. Family counseling.
What if it's not her that's the issue? What if it is literally
her
parents?
With her parents? That's what I'm saying. Like, have
family,
that family counseling, and not even just her being the issue. Maybe she needs to kind of flush out her feelings about living in this home where she felt like she had to do that.
Yeah, she definitely needs some more coping mechanisms.
She needs that. So I just hope they could mandate that, and maybe that could help their family structure. I don't know.
I do think black women were hella harsh on her though, and wanted to throw her because it was like
I was harsh on her.
But no, it wasn't even. I didn't even see yours, but it was people like she's gonna get shackled down. I was like, first of all, she just said her parents were. I need people to see like where they're rushed to, and that had more to do with the projection of this, like, you're taking away from the girls who are really out here. But I was like, again, guys, it's like really back because we're wanting to give her such a harsh punishment, and that's what drove her to something to do so stupid in the first place.
I feel you. Okay, to end us off, I want to quickly have us talk about, I don't know if you watched that video of Charmaine from the Black Ink Crew.
What did he say?
Okay, so Charmaine, she's engaged.
Oh, the Haitian mom. Yes, girl, I watched that.
So let me set it up for the listeners. So Charmaine is just a member of the Black Ink Crew, Chicago, and she's engaged to this Haitian man, and has Caribbean, has Haitian folk know there is just a certain manner, a certain way to go about interacting with Haitian mothers, Caribbean mothers, all sorts, Jamaican, whomever. If you're speaking to a Haitian mother, you have to kind of come correct. So she invited the mother to her home, and she served her Haitian food. This is like her way of kind of connecting.
Yeah, that's what she said. Bonding. I want to connect. Yeah,
because she's pregnant. She is pregnant. Yeah. They're engaged, and that was a beautiful gesture. But what she failed was she served the Haitian food on paper plates. And I noticed that there's like this divide on Twitter. People are feeling like, well, you come to my house, you're going to eat whatever I serve you or however I serve you as. You should be like, I'm even serving you, blah, blah, blah. And I get that. But I also think about, like, people know fine china. You have certain plates, certain decor that you bring out on special occasions. And she may not think, oh, serving my future mother-in-law is a special occasion. But it is. And I'm just like, I wish her fiance would have told her, hey, babe.
Yeah, that's part of the conversation, how that nigga was not involved and helping at all.
Do you have a plate? Put it on a plate.
Here's the thing. When you're so nervous and you're trying to focus on the details, like, let alone cooking, Max. Then you're cooking a cuisine that has nothing. You have probably eaten it, but people don't realize when you're talking about, especially like cuisines, very specialized ethnic cuisines, the type of, like, you got to use Scotch bonnets and jollof, depending on what type of jollof you're trying to make, and other shit like that. Like, all those details, and you trying to make sure the food tastes good. Because the food didn't look bad on the paper plate, okay? It didn't. Then she forgot about the fucking plates.
Yeah.
And that's when I'm like, okay, I gave her grace for that, because I was like, y'all, did y'all see the amount of food she had on the plate? She had to make, and y'all know about y'all's cooking. Like, shit takes hours to make. Yes. She made, it was some rice, some stews, there was some seasonings had to go on. She's pregnant.
Is a lot of work. It's a pork that you have to cut up, and you have to cook well. If you don't cook pork well, obviously you get sick. You got to fry it well. You got to season it well. It's a lot of work.
And so she was just so focused on getting the meal right.
Yeah.
And she was just like, shit, it has to go on a plate. We don't even understand if it's time constraint now. Yeah, people are like, well, plate was right there. But my whole point was, when you're so focused on trying to get all these things right, there's always that one thing you forget. And it was the plate. But I looked at the food on the plate. But my thing is, that's where her able-bodied fiance, baby daddy was sitting right the fuck there. And whose mama is that?
His.
That's his motherfucking mama. And it should have been his ultimate goal to make sure his girl looked the best. She was in charge of food. He wasn't even in. I was like, you should have been that motherfucker cooking with her. At least handing her the seasonings, making sure like, hey, don't put that much on there. Stuff like that. You know, like if that's what she needed or something. He should have set the table. While she was in there cooking, they could have had, because they had an open concept. He should have set the table, and there was no reason why he did not have that table set. Or at the very least, he should have reminded her. My thing was, she had so much she was working with. She had the whole baby in her fucking stomach. And she was trying to cook an authentic meal for her mother-in-law. And she did not have the table set. And people were like, well, how did she forget it? Why did she? I was just like, she forgot because she had other shit to focus on.
Because she forgot.
Do you really think this person who literally, and this is her verbally saying, it's not even me being, I'm just, just what's the word? Damn, off the top of my tip of my tongue. It starts with S. I'm just not just saying this off the top of my mind of speculating. I'm not speculating. Girl, I was trying to find it. She said it. She was just like, I want to make a good impression. This is mom. And I want to, I've never cooked this food before. She's literally laying out the challenges that had been overcoming. We don't know how long she was cooking the meal. We just see him leaning against the fucking thing, smiling at her, distracting her.
Not helping.
And then, and so I was like, y'all really had the whole conversation about why she served her on a plate, when the conversation should have been why this bum ass nigga wasn't doing shit to assist, to make sure that the future wife, I didn't even know they were engaged or that she was pregnant. Yeah. I thought she was just bigger. And so the woman you were in love with that you felt so deemed worthy, you set her up for failure because you wanted to laugh? That was the conversation, Max. The conversation was, I mean, yes, it's funny. Would anybody, my thing was, it'd been different if we could tell she was just being like, fuck it, I'm gonna give her a paper plate. Then this conversation would have been that. But she literally was going on about how she was just so nervous and she was trying to put all her focus into this food. Is that really the type of person that just was like, fuck it, I don't give a fuck about this paper plate. She gonna eat what now there were people saying that, but that's not her, that wasn't her attitude. She was literally so concerned about making an impression on herself, and she took it with grace. Let's talk about the other part of that. This woman sitting up here talking about her food dry.
She was like, it's salty, it's dry. You got some water.
And he was like,
I'm gonna choke.
And she sat there.
But here's the thing.
And didn't say anything. And who's to say why, even if she said, okay, this paper plate, you just gonna get the paper plate because I've done all this work. I just don't have it in me to wash these 2 dishes. We can't give her grace on that? Like and you see who she was working with, and it's still like, would that paper plate have really made a difference? Is what it really comes down to. I, for one, don't think that shit could have been served on the China that the president of Haitian himself is out here sipping drinks on.
Okay, I think the mother has this bias against her for sure, but I do think serving it on a real plate would have served a little bit of a difference.
I think she would have said her meat was dry and salty.
Right, but
she would have said that
on a real plate. At least on a real plate.
No, that's my thing. Like, if the plate would have really like canceled out, I really don't want to be like a actually ass nigga. I want to be like, yo, yes, I agree. Like, I would have tried to been like, yeah, let me have this on a plate. But then I think about how nasty she was towards her, and I'm like, bitch, that plate wouldn't have made a difference. Like, she still would have been that nasty to her.
Maybe it's just the cooking me. I just like the proper presentation, and you can't really eat on, especially the type of paper plate I saw.
Max trying to say the paper plate is what made that pork dry.
It was just like, it was just like, you can't really eat off of it. There'll be a hole when you're trying to grab it with your fork. If you get a real sturdy plate, it could have helped. So
never,
maybe, but I do definitely think he should have been better. He failed her. He didn't really speak on it too much, and it just speaks to the fact that he probably is a mama's boy. He probably doesn't know how to speak up in times like that.
But did he have to laugh? He didn't just not speak up.
A lot of people laugh when things are uncomfortable.
No, bro. He a grown ass man who about to be a leader of a household. Ain't that in the culture too? Ain't that in the culture too? How you supposed to be a grown ass man, leave the household, and you let your mama call her?
I know 35-year-old men who are not about to be fathers, who are already fathers, and are immature in so many ways.
And let's talk about them instead of this paper plate. I'm real for real about it. Like,
but she should have had a real plate though.
Yeah, I'm all game with the like, let's giggle, bitch, because you really served this whole full course meal on a paper plate. But the extent of the argument is what I'm mad about. It went past the like, bitch, y'all, she served this on a paper plate too. Now it's part of her character that she served it on a paper plate. I'm like, pull that shit back. That's because crazy. If now that we're bringing, so now we're gonna make this an argument about a character. Now you gotta actually look at the shit that whose character is flawed here. It ain't that paper plate. Right, like I was cool with the whole let's clown her ass because this is a paper plate, and it's like really because I see like 5 dishes on this one paper plate and it's smushed in there, and you just really had to make sure them hoes was sitting on the corner so no juice leaked up. It was a full plate.
It was a whole.
She didn't even, I don't even remember her putting the plate down for herself. She had a plate for him and she had a plate for her. She served them first. Yeah. The woman carrying life, okay? And
the woman carrying life.
And I was sitting there like, yes, I noticed the paper plate, but then it was days. They're still talking about to this day, like it's part of the rundown of like closing out 2019, the paper plate debacle. Like what the fuck?
Paper plate debate.
And I was just like, oh, now we're broadening the scope of the conversation. Oh, okay, well now I can't fuck with you. Now I gotta be like the actually niggas like, well, that she was a bitch.
Well,
because actually, and I say this to something, I guess it's on me. All mothers, even like I'm not Caribbean or Haitian or participating in that culture, but black mothers are still harsh as well. All mothers, I just think for some reason there's a stereotype, and a lot of mothers have to feel like they have to fill up. They have to be mean to their suitors. Because my mother was very rude, especially people they don't want them with. My mother was like that to my brother and sister's choices. And I can remember the first time she said something like, my brother is married to a white woman and my sister's married to somebody who's not my mom felt like she was too good for. And so you had the bum issues and you had my mom used to call this girl Little House on the Prairie. If you grew up, girl, no, like, and I was looking at her like, yikes. You saying this in my face, like I'm not gonna correct you, because here's the thing, like, you didn't raise me like that.
Oh,
because these people, my sister and brother chose them, and these people are not harming them. They're not harming she wasn't harming my brother, she wasn't harming my sister. Now, did I necessarily agree with their choices either? But it would have never come out my mouth to talk about them like that, and to say shit about them, to try to make, because my mom was, what happens is they project their anger from that they can't control their children.
Right.
So they're projecting that shit. And I was like, we're not going to cut that off. You need and I told my mama very frankly in very respectful manner, right? And this is my mother. I'm the oldest. I'm not my mother. I didn't grow up talking back to my mother, but it was just like, who is this person? Because I don't know what these words coming at your mouth, because you are not a nasty person. Mm-hmm. You never raised me to be like that. And it's much of this. And so I was just like, for you to say these things about these other significant others, and she wouldn't necessarily say them in front of their faces, but I just was like, you saying that shit to me is the same. Why? The real issue is you don't want to get on Jonathan or Natasha because you don't like that they chose people that you didn't feel like were going to help and elevate them. And that's on them. They are as good as they are to them, because they want to be, and you can't blame if she wants to marry Little House on the Prairie, or if she wants to marry a bum.
That's his choice. That's
her choice. Yeah. And I can understand you being as a mother. Yes, I'm not a mother. You create a whole human. You got, like, it goes back. You have a vision in your mind for them. You want better for them. But you got to stop yourself when you have to really be able to, like, hold on, like, I'm out here verbally abusing. Am I verbally abusing, saying derogatory things toward their significant others? Because what you really hope is you cause a chasm that they'll dismiss themselves from the relationship because you don't have any power in it. And that's not
parents,
right.
Like we were saying earlier, parents don't consider their children as independent beings. They want to have this life set up for them, and when we have the audacity to go against that and live for ourselves, or whether ourselves is completely to the extreme left or right or just a little bit different, it's like, wait, who you marrying?
But here's the thing, they don't look at I always looked at the bigger picture, and I think it's because she was always, you only have each other. It was always just us four.
Okay.
I'm looking at it as two, and by this time, my brother and my sister both had their first kid when they were 18. you talking about them is causing harm, because what they're going to do is they're going to separate from you, the most sensitive being on this damn planet, and you would hate that. Now they're spending less time with you, and they don't ever want to talk to you because you only got bad things about the person that they love, or you don't have a relationship with your grandkids. So I looked at it as you're causing a schism, you're causing conflict, and you're doing harm, and we're not going to play those games.
And obviously this is not worth it.
It's not worth it, because it's not going to work. And I regard my mother as a very intelligent person. So just on that standpoint alone, I was just like, that's not good. It's not working. That's not going to get the desired result. So then all you're doing is causing tension and drama, and we already the only family we got. So why would you do it? You know what I'm saying? Like, why would you be that? And she listened. I was surprised myself. Like, again, I didn't necessarily like these folks, but I think it had more to do with hearing that side of my mother. And everybody has a side to them, right? Like, it was just like, Mama, you for real? Like, damn, don't, like, okay, she a white girl, but calm down. You're being you're prejudiced right now. I don't understand these words.
House on the Prairie, that's funny though.
Girl, she was like Little House on the Prairie, girl.
Oh, okay. We're going to end it right here. You know, this is great. It's another great
Thank you for inviting me and listen to me ramble, guys.
Yes.
I appreciate it.
Thank you for accepting and being a part of this conversation. This was great. Definitely got to do it again and again. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I will check in with you guys next time within the new year, 2020.
Yay. Merry Christmas, guys.
Yes, happy holidays and all of that. Peace.
Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of God Built This Podcast with your host, Maxine. Be sure to follow and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and SoundCloud, and also leave a comment. God bless.